And we know that our bodies carry memory with the calendar. And so if you notice some type of tension, or I'm feeling kind of off and not myself, then it's important to just be curious and go, is this the anniversary of something?
Imagine being emotionally and spiritually stronger. What would it look like to know you can be okay when hard things happen? Welcome to the Healing Her podcast. Listen in as best friends Christy and Donna share stories of God's healing work in their lives. Donna is a licensed therapist, and Christy is a veteran communicator in the marketing world. In Season 2, Healing Her Grief, they share their own stories of walking through loss, process the stages of grief, and provide some do's and don'ts to better care for grieving people. So whether you're seeking comfort, understanding, or support, Christy and Donna invite you to grab a cup of coffee and join them at the table as we navigate the challenging journey of loss and find hope on the other side.
There is so much to do when someone passes away.
Right.
People do not talk about this enough. So you're already trying to wrap your mind around all of these stages, all of this. I can't sleep. My heart is broken. And then there's, well, I've got to plan a funeral. Okay, I need a death certificate. Was there life insurance? I've got to see if there was a will. All kinds of
Gather
things.
all the pictures.
Yes.
Write the obituary.
Yes, all of those things. And it is just a lot.
And then there's all the legal stuff.
So much legal stuff.
You've got to move your names on your bank accounts. Right. You've got to do the credit cards, all of those things.
Right. The deed on the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. My husband, Jeff, lost both of his parents in a 3-month period of time.
Yes.
But it took over 2 years to finalize the estate.
Yes.
And that was a long, drawn-out process to grieve. It feels like once you just sort of accept things, and then you need another this, and you need another death certificate, and then you need another paper.
Yes.
It was so busy.
Yes. And so really the tool that we recommend here is if you can prepare those things for your family. We have just recently, my sister and I just purchased everything we need for when my mom does pass.
Okay.
We've pre-written the obituary. Our next step is to gather photos so that when that time comes, then those things are already taken care of.
Jeff and I have recently purchased our own burial plots.
Yeah.
When you lose someone, it makes you understand there's a lot to do. And we just wanted to make sure there are a few things done if something quick or tragic happened to us.
That's right. That's right. Another thing that is an enormous task that no one wants to do and that there's really no rules for is going through clothing and possessions.
Yes.
There can be just so much pain associated with it.
Right.
I can just remember I gathered too many things, from my parents' house. And this is years after my dad had passed, but after we moved my mom into assisted living. And there were so many things that I held on to that 5 years later, I was like, okay, I don't need all this. But there were some things I was like, but it was that.
It was that.
But you can't keep everything, right? So I really hope that people can have compassion for their family members because not everybody is ready at the same time.
Right. I really experienced that when my grandma Kay died. She was such a special woman in my life. And I was there when she died of ALS.
Wow.
And it was such a holy moment. Yeah. And so when I was processing all of that firsthand experience of grief, not just losing my grandma, but watching her die. That it was a lot.
Yes.
And then when it was time to go through her Avon jewelry and all of the things that were her, my cousins were happily doing that, and I was still grieving, and I wasn't ready.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that the time was right, and so we should do that. But I think the truth is not everybody's on the same timeline.
That's right.
And what would you say about that?
I would say communicate, compromise, have compassion. I mean, there are situations where this house was rented and we're going to have to clean it out. We don't have the luxury, of waiting for 6 months or a year or whatever it is. But if it's possible, it's really great to show care and consideration for your family members by just waiting for people to sort of be on the same page. But there's no real recommendation in terms of in a week, which I would actually recommend it should not be in a week.
No.
Or it should be in a month, or it should be in a year. It's like, when do people actually feel like, okay, we can do this, and expect there are going to be tears.
Yes.
And so that's normal, right? That's normal. And so expect that it's not going to be easy, but it is a task that needs to be done.
So how does someone prepare for the coming year and all of the anniversaries and holidays?
Yes, it's such a great question. That first year, in many ways, I think is the hardest.
Yes.
It's the first time you'll have your wedding anniversary with this person. It may be, if there has been a diagnosis, there's going to be the anniversary of a diagnosis, the anniversary of the death, the anniversary of all kinds of things. Literally any special date can be an anniversary.
Like if you're divorced, it's your wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
What do you even do with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even the anniversary of the divorce being final is hard. So it's just all normal for there to be something. And we know that our bodies carry memory with the calendar. And so if you notice some type of tension, or I'm feeling kind of off and not myself, then it's important to just be curious and go, is this the anniversary of something? It's really common for people who maybe they found out that they were being cheated on, for there to be literally a day of grief of like, it was a year ago that this was happening, or 2 years ago this was happening. Now, eventually we move forward and people can go, oh, it's been 5 years. I never imagined that I could have built this life for myself.
Right.
But those first anniversaries are really, really hard. I really encourage people to write. I know I keep saying it on
and
this,
it's so
this
beautiful.
season, but write letters to your loved one. This is what it's like. I'm missing you today. This is what I'm remembering.
Right.
Writing letters even to your own self, but keep writing. Be honest about what it's like for you, whether there's anger or grief or relief or any of those things that we've talked about. It's important to get those things out and to get those things on paper, because it's part of the healing process.
So our book on grief and grieving shares a story about a young woman who loses her sister.
Right.
And she actually writes letters to her sister throughout that first year that she's gone. And
Wow.
she writes about how she feels. She writes about what she's been doing. And it seems like a really healthy way to process losing a close sibling.
Yes. And then she has the story, right? That we talked about in a previous episode. She has her own story of what she was focusing on at the beginning, what she was missing, and how she's doing now. I think that is so beautiful that someone took the time to do that. It's incredible.
And there's a movie too called P.S. I Love You,
okay.
and that's with Hilary Swank and Gerard Butler. And the story is that he has an illness and then dies, and it's a process. And on her 30th birthday, after he's gone, of course, she receives a first letter in a series of letters from him in his own handwriting. And of course, at the end of each letter, it says, P.S. I love you, the name of the movie. But he did this to help her process the grief and move forward to build a new life.
Wow.
And it's a special movie, and I love that. But it's also funny and sweet and fun.
Yeah, and an example of letter writing. He was forward thinking in this movie, right? But what an amazing thing, to get in the mail.
Oh, my word.
You can't even imagine it.
No, and she was floored.
Yeah, of course she was. Of course she was. Of course she was.
It's a good story.
That's right. So along with anniversaries, I encourage people to get ready for the holidays. And to think about even, okay, you usually go to this grandparent's house.
Right.
That's not going to happen this year. What are you going to do with that?
Right.
You know, do a journal entry on what it's like for you that we're not going to do that.
Right.
Who do you usually see at that
Right.
event that you're not going to see this year?
Right.
How are things changing?
Or like Jeff's mom, she always brought chocolate marble birthday cake with chocolate coffee frosting for our birthdays. Wow. No one makes that anymore.
Wow.
And that we still comment at birthdays that Grandma Jan would have made this.
That's right. That's right. And it's a sweet way to remember, but it also an ache in your heart.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are the tools that we recommend for preparing for holidays is to communicate.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to consider, what do I want to do this year?
Yeah.
You know, maybe you take a different kind of trip at Christmas. Maybe you don't cook at Thanksgiving, but you go out to eat. Maybe you decide, I'm not going to put up the lights or turn or send out the Christmas cards. And grief is a good reason to not do those
Right.
things. It just sort of marks, this is a different kind of year. You know what I really wish? I really wish that we still lived in a time where we could see who's grieving. You remember in It's a Wonderful Life, after George Bailey's dad dies, in that next scene, we see him with this black
The
armband.
armband.
And every now and then we'll see something like that. But as a community, you know, women don't wear black for a year after someone has died. And I wish we had markers, because people are, you know, experiencing grief in these different ways.
Right.
So, but going back to communicating, what do I want to do? Do I want to do things differently? And just, again, being kind to yourself and allowing yourself to do something that is different from how you've done it in the past.
Right. And I know there's an event called Blue Christmas. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So there's some church communities that offer a service called Blue Christmas, and it's on December 22nd every year. It's the longest night of the year. And basically it holds space in a religious environment for people to just honor the fact that they're missing someone this year. And so in the midst of holidays, when everybody's going to a party and things are supposed to be so happy, it just provides this safe place to say, I'm grieving and I'm remembering loss.
That's so precious.
And if you're in a community that maybe doesn't offer that, then take your own time, light a candle, honor your own loss so that you have given space to what you're missing this year.
Right. My mom actually did that this past Christmas. In her grief class, they shared this way to pay tribute to your loved one. And so we were all gathered at the dining room table with the meal in front of us, and she lit a candle and she said some beautiful words, and we all cried in our own way, just marking this journey that Dad is gone. He's in heaven.
Yeah.
But we love him.
Yes. In this episode, we've provided some ways that people can sort of prepare for grief, thinking about, okay, what would it be like to plan a funeral?
Right.
What are those things to kind of get in order? And then also just to get ready for, it's normal to experience sadness during the holidays and to be ready for sadness around anniversaries. So we're continuing to normalize.
Yes.
And we hope that this has been helpful information, and we invite you to share your comments on social media, and we hope that you'll share this episode with a friend if you think it'd be helpful for them.
We hope today's conversation brought you comfort and insight on your journey toward healing. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and share with a friend who might benefit. Remember, you can follow along on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Pella TV. We want to thank Side by Side Ministries and Adri and Marla Gruneweg for their financial support. This podcast was created by Donna Durham and Christy Vandervoort. It was produced and recorded by Monty Godike.